Hi, second graders. This week's art lesson is about architecture. Architecture is a word that maybe you've heard before, and how many know what architecture means? An architect is someone who designs buildings, right? And architecture is the kind of art that is the design and building of buildings. Okay, did you ever think about how buildings can be forms of art? They definitely can be, right? Especially when the architecture is really thought out in an artistic way. Today's project is kind of a project and lecture together. So I'm going to be showing you how to do the project part, and then we're going to be going back to the lecture and then the project and the lecture. Okay, so the supplies that you're going to need today are a regular pencil and then some color pencils, a stapler if you have it, and then 3 pieces of paper. 2 are just going to be blank pieces of paper, and the third one is a printout. So have your grown-up go to the website and find this printout file and print it out for you. And we're going to be making an architecture book. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is take your printout and put it on the top of the 3 pages. So printout and then 2 blanks. You're going to line them all up by kind of tapping them on the table like that, and then carefully fold them in half. Try to get it so that all your corners are right on top of each other, and then fold it in half like that. And you're going to take your stapler and you can do 3 or so staples down the side of your book. Okay, just like that, you have your very own book of really cool architecture right here in Salt Lake City. All right, now we're going to be talking about each of these, so we won't worry too much about that page yet. First thing to do is open up to the first page. And we're going to go to the lecture and learn about our first building. Okay, so our first building is a famous building around the world. It is called the Pantheon. Okay, this is in Rome in Italy. And the style of this building is the Corinthian style. So the main thing about the Corinthian style are these columns, okay? So all of these big, strong columns, and then lots of times there's a triangle shape top. Okay, now these buildings were built a very long time ago, before our country even existed. But people thought that they looked so cool, so good and so important looking that even today, when we want to build a building in our country that has to feel important, this is usually the kind of style that we do it in. So a lot of government buildings, like our state capitol building, are done in this same style. Do you guys see the columns? A lot of columns in our state capitol building, right? Now, this is up on the hill right here in Salt Lake City, because Salt Lake City is the capital of the state of Utah. And again, we can see it's this Corinthian style building. And what do we see on top of the columns? That's right, that triangle shape. A lot of Corinthian buildings also have domes. Building, like we talked about, it's Corinthian in style. Corinthian buildings were built around the year 0. That's 2019 or 2020 years ago. The Utah State Capitol building was designed to copy that style. So even though it's been 2,000 years since this style was invented, we still like it so much that we still copy it these days. Our Utah State Capitol building was built around 100 years ago in 1915. And we'll notice that some of the important features are that it has the columns, it has the dome, and it's symmetrical. That means it's the same on the left and the right. Okay, so our first building is the Utah State Capitol building. Now, for each page, you're going to write the name of the building on this side. So you're going to write Utah State Capitol building. Okay, now if you need to pause on either the lecture or here to get the spelling for these things, you can, okay? If ever during this I'm moving too quickly, just hit pause. Don't try to keep up with me, okay? Just hit pause. Now, on this side of the pages, we're going to be doing a sketch of the building. Now, I'll show you how to do it really quick, and then while you do it, you pull up the picture of the building from the lecture, okay? So I'm looking at it right now, and I see that the main part of the building is a long rectangle, like this. And then the center rectangle kind of sticks out from the rest like a little square in the middle, like that. And there's a lot of steps that come down the front of the Capitol building like that. So I'm going to kind of draw lines on my things to look like stairs coming down. We talked about that triangle. So you can put on your triangle. And then above that, there's kind of a tower and then a dome. And of course, this is a little bit more simple than the actual building, but that's okay because we're just practicing. Now, if you want to add kind of how many details you do on your picture, on your sketch, is totally up to you. And I'm just going to give you an idea of how to do it, okay? Now you have all your color pencils here, so if you want to, you can add kind of that area of lawn in the front. Again, this is totally up to you how much of the detail of the picture you want to do. There's kind of lawns out to the side. And you have a blue sky. Okay, now again, do as much detail as you want on the sketch, okay? And on this side of the page, I want you to write down some interesting facts. So we know that our Utah State Capitol was built in 1915. So you can put that on there. Our Utah State Capitol is Corinthian style. That's important. And for Corinthian style, we know that there's columns, that there's symmetry, it's the same on both sides, and it has domes. Okay, and then any other interesting facts that you want to write down from the lecture part, okay? Okay, our next famous building around the world we're going to look at is the Sydney Opera House.
Any of you heard of P. Sherman 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney?
Sydney? Oh, sure. Why, Ted here's got relatives in Sydney, don't you, Ted? Sure do.
Oh, look! Sydney. Sydney! Sydney! Yeah, Sydney again!
You were right, Dory! We made it!
The style of the Sydney Opera House is modern. Okay, does anyone recognize the Sydney Opera House? It's a really famous building. Another modern building that we have right here in Salt Lake City is the Natural History Museum. This is up above the University of Utah campus along the foothills there. It's a museum that has a lot of natural history, obviously. So they have dinosaur bones. They have a lot of different information about animals that lived a long time ago and that live now here in Utah. And they also have a lot of neat information about the people that lived a long time ago in Utah, as well as just general things about the earth and a lot of different science things. So it's a really cool museum. If you haven't been, I highly recommend it. How we know that it's a modern building are the interesting angles. So nothing's really super straight in that building. Everything's at an interesting and unique angle. the focus on natural materials. So we have wood or stone, and we also have large concrete areas that look like stone. And that the look of the building is very unique. So in modern architecture, the architect wants to design something that doesn't look like anything else. The style is modern. Modern style started in the 50s, about 70 years ago, and continues today. Our Natural History Museum was built in 2011. And again, some ways that we can tell that it's modern is clean lines. Clean means not too decorated or fancy or frilly with too many details, kind of simple lines, and also curved lines that aren't straight. So lines that aren't going in any kind of straight way. And also just the uniqueness of the design is important to modernism. Again, just like we did on our first page, for every building, Utah building that we learn, we're going to write the name of the building. We're going to do a sketch and then write some interesting facts. Okay? Natural History Museum. Now, for this, every way that you look at the Natural History Museum, it looks a little different, right? So this is kind of a shot from the side a little bit. If you looked at it from the front, it would look a little bit different. Right now I'm drawing kind of that shiny brick coppery looking area on the top right. And I noticed that underneath it, none of the lines are quite straight, by the way. So I'm doing that on purpose. Underneath it is a part that has lines coming down. And this part has kind of almost like a brick pattern. Like that. And then there's a smaller one in the background that kind of repeats a little bit that shape. And this one has some windows in the bottom. And again, it has lines going down on the bottom part and then kind of a brick pattern for the top part. And down here are some columns and some windows on that side as well, and then like a little wall on that side. Okay, so that's all my picture is going to have. I think I'll color this one in just a little bit because I really like how the architect put in colors that seem natural to the environment. It kind of almost blends into the hills. The way that none of the lines are straight, the way that there's a lot of browns in it, just like our hillside. Okay, there's our sketch. Now, interesting facts about the Natural History Museum. Modern style. Built in 2011. That's only about 9 years ago. Clean lines. And curves. Unusual, not straight lines, right? And now this might be one that less kids have heard of or seen before. It's called the Burj Khalifa. It is a skyscraper. Okay, so the style of building we're looking at right now is skyscraper. Now, these buildings around this skyscraper are also skyscrapers, but this one is the tallest skyscraper in the world, and it's 6.5 times as high as the biggest skyscraper we have here in Salt Lake. So imagine the biggest skyscraper we have here in Salt Lake would be about like this, And you would have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of our tallest building would go into this one. It's 2,722 feet tall. Very cool. The tallest skyscraper we have here in Salt Lake is the Wells Fargo Center. It's in downtown Salt Lake. The Wells Fargo Center was built in 1998. It's the tallest building in Utah, 422 feet tall. It has 24 floors, 13 different elevators, and 2 helicopter landing pads. Pretty cool. Now, it's a skyscraper, so it's tall. So I'm going to make my picture tall as well. And notice that I'm looking at it a little bit from a side angle. So on the front, all of the lines are going to go straight across like that. And on the side, the lines go down a little bit. That helps it look dimensional so we can see some space. Okay, I see some trees at the bottom. The trees are also good because they help us see the scale, that is how big, right? If the trees were this tall, we wouldn't think it was a very tall building. But if the trees are this tall, we know that that building is very tall. And some of the other buildings around it are tall buildings, but they're not nearly as tall as this Wells Fargo Center. And here in this area, we have an area that's kind of darker and different, and then there's like a roof part. Okay, your sketch can look any way you like it. Color in this blue part. And there's just a lot of windows that all look pretty much the same. So I don't think I'm going to color every one, but I'll just draw lines like that to show kind of the idea that there's windows all around. It does have kind of a light blue roof. I'll color in my trees. A little bit of the sky in the background. And some kind of gray for the other buildings. And that's all my sketch is going to have. For our notes for the Wells Fargo building, we're going to write down that it's a skyscraper. Skyscraper is a compound word, right? What are the 2 words in skyscraper? Sky. We all know what sky means, right? Sky. Scraper. Scraper is like to scrape something. So when these buildings first started being made, people thought they were so tall that they almost looked up and looked like they were touching or scraping the sky. Skyscraper. We know that the Wells Fargo Center was built in 1998. I was in high school. Tallest building in Utah. That's an interesting fact. It's 422 feet tall. And we don't have to write down every fact, but I think it's cool that it has 13 elevators. Okay, next famous building around the world is the Notre Dame Cathedral. It is a Gothic style cathedral. A lot of you kids may have heard about the Notre Dame Cathedral last year because very famously it caught on fire, and it's just one of the most beautiful and famous buildings in the world. So when it caught on fire, it was a very big story, very sad for a lot of people because it's been around for hundreds of years. This spire, which you can't see very well in this picture, it's in the background here, fell and was destroyed, but thankfully most of this front side of the cathedral survived the fire, and they're working very hard right now to save everything that they can and rebuild it so that people can go inside again. It's in France, and this Gothic cathedral style is is another style that, even though it was done hundreds of years ago, people love so much still that they copy that style and make buildings in that style today. Now, a cathedral is a church, and so here in Salt Lake City, we have the Cathedral of the Madeleine, which is a Gothic style church. And how we can, oh, here's a shot of the inside of the cathedral. So really beautifully decorated, a lot of scenes from the Bible and church themes because it is a church. So the Gothic cathedral style building that we have here in Salt Lake is called the Cathedral of the Madeleine. Like we talked about, it's Gothic in style and has a little bit of Roman style as well, which are similar. So this building was built in 1909, so a little bit over 100 years ago. Some ways that we can tell it's a Gothic cathedral is that has pointy spires and towers in it. And I wrote here spiky spires. They just look spiky, so they're very jagged and pointy looking, almost sharp looking. That's one way to tell that it's a Gothic building. Another little thing I don't have written down, but see these little creatures sticking out all over on the towers? Those are gargoyles. They're water spouts in the shapes of creatures. In 4th grade, you and I are going to make gargoyles out of clay. It will be really fun. So that's another way to tell that it's a Gothic cathedral. Stained glass. Okay, so a lot of these windows have stained glass in them, and that's colored glass. The little segments are different colors and they make a picture. So there's pictures in the windows, especially this round stained glass window. It's called a rose window, and that's an important feature of a Gothic cathedral. And arches. So these are round arches here, 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 all over. Pointed arches are especially a Gothic cathedral thing. These rounded arches are a little bit more Roman. So this building combines a couple of the different styles of cathedrals. The cathedral. A cathedral is a church of the Madeleine. Okay, should we do a quick sketch? The Cathedral of the Madeleine has 2 tall towers on the sides, and then a pointy roof in the middle. It has the big rose window, and it also has doors in the front that have 3 points like that. These towers have lots of spines on them. And there's also arched windows going all up them. I bet you could go into these towers and look at the windows up close. That would be really neat. If any of you have done that, let me know. I would like to hear about what it was like inside there. There's arches in the doorways on the front. There's a cross in the middle on the center spire, and some more arched windows in the center. All right, is that a pretty good sketch? Again, your sketch can have whatever you find that you think is interesting on the building. I'd like to see you sketch out. Put in some blue sky in the background. It has some beautiful wood doors that are a little kind of tannish orange wood down the bottom. And then the whole building is kind of a medium gray. So I'm going to color mine gray. And we have some kind of cool trees on the sides. Okay, now now for our facts for the Cathedral of the Madeleine. The style is Gothic, built around 1909. And some interesting things about the style are stained glass, spires. Spires are towers or things that stick up out of the building, arches, and it's not on my list on my PowerPoint, but I think that the gargoyles are one of the coolest things about Gothic buildings. Okay, now, as you can see, you have a whole blank spread here in your book. And for next week's project, I'll tell you what to do with that.